Hello and welcome to this edition of Community Voices Uganda on Civic Space TV. I am Phillip, Muliisa. I want to welcome all of you to yet another episode of this conversation. And today we talk about something so important to every other person. It is sometimes it's personal, other times it's communal, other times it's national, and it's important that we gather here to have a conversation around this particular matter and see how we can improve our community in line of that matter. But before we get into it, I will briefly first have us to talk to the audience before we get into the depth of the conversation. And I know I have very many powerful people here today who will want to first say hello to our audience before we continue with the conversation. I'll start with you, Mr. Mayanja Hannington. Greetings, you're welcome to the conversation.
Thank you, Phillip, for welcoming this platform. I'm grateful to be here again. I am Hannington Mayanja. I am an educationist, at the same time, an advocate.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayanja, for joining us. We're happy to have you here. And certainly what we talk about today is connected to the education, and we see how you give us views about that particular subject. Bridget, Bagonza, greetings, you're most welcome.
Thank you for hosting. My name is Bridget Bagonza. I am a law student at CU, and I am a mental health advocate attached to Mental Health Uganda. I work with teenagers in school.
All right. Thank you, Bridget. We're happy to have you, and we can't wait to hear what you have from the perspective of a student, but also as a mental health advocate. We assume you have a bit of information to share with us so that we can help ourselves and indeed the audience and country at large as matters dealing with mental health in this country. I also have Dr. Flavia Kyomugisha. Doctor, greetings, you're most welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, each and everybody. I'm glad to be here, and I'm happy to see that we have a space where we are going to talk about the mental health of the youth. Well, apparently we are trying to demystify the word mental health because of the stigma around, trying to use psychological distress to see how we get down and break it to speak like the way we talk about malaria. But I'm happy to be here. I'm a mental health professional. I work with the National Mental Referral Hospital. I am also a palliative care psychiatry specialist, and I'm also an EEG technologist. Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. We're very happy to have you, and we can't wait to pick some of the knowledge you have to share about this particular topic, being you are a specialist in the very field we're talking about. Thank you so much for joining us. And Madam Rose Kyarimpa, greetings. You're most welcome to the conversation.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the invitation to this space. I'm Kyarimpa Rose, a professional counselor and a founder at the ofBuhumuriro Counseling Center. I'm very glad to be here and to share more about mental health, especially among the youth, and especially now there's rampant of suicide cases in schools. So thank you so much for this topic today, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Rose Kyarimpa, a counselor at that. We're happy to have you, and we can't wait to hear how you help these young people when they come to you with these kind of challenges. Our colleagues, just this week, we've had very bad news from one of the major schools across this beautiful city where a student, and you will allow me, I will keep the names and the name of the school for purposes of protecting that institution and the student and the family. But we have a student that was found hanging in the dormitory very early in the morning. This student who was, I would say, a parent took to school to pick some knowledge and get to move on with life. And influence the future of this country is found dead in the dormitory, hanging, allegedly having hanged himself. And when we get this story here in Kampala, it is not very new to us. When you check the papers or when you check news platforms across the country, you realize that, for example, in the last 1 year, you've had alleged suicide cases from, you can talk about here in Kampala. A few months ago, there were about 2 cases from Wakiso. We had one from PG, we had one from Namisindwa, we had one from Mobende. And these are all students in secondary school who, after experiencing a couple of challenges, they choose to end their lives. And we are here to talk about this issue. What is causing this to our young people, to our pupils, to our students? Because even when you read in the last 1 year, we even have people in primary school, primary 6, primary 5, someone thinks about committing suicide. Where is this coming from, and how can it be handled to make sure it doesn't happen? Because it is painful, not just for this person undergoing the suicide, but for the parents, for fellow learners, for the institution itself, for the community, and for the country at large. So I want to start there. And Dr. Flavia, you allow me to start with you. Mental health. Before we even talk about the students, what is this animal referred to as mental health? And in your introduction, you talked about trying to demystify that term into a simpler term, psychological distress. But what is this whole thing we call mental health, and what does it even mean for individuals? Yes, Flavia.
Thank you, Philip, for the opportunity. Well, I would start by saying mental health, each person has a definition on how they understand it. And it's upon how you understand mental health and you will be able to practice it. However, the World Health Organization defines mental health as a state of complete physical, mental, psychological, social well-being, whereby you're able to work to accomplish your work, cope with the stresses of life, and also perform or contribute to the community where you are living. Per se, if you're a teacher, you're able to go and teach. If you're a lawyer, you're able to go and do your work. If you are an advocate, you're able to do your work, meet the stresses of the job, cope with them, and then contribute to your community. It could be in terms of paying back, in terms of delivering a service. So that's how we understand mental health. It's just that people are now kind of misquoting mental health and mental illness. And that's how the stigmatization is coming in. Because mental health is just different. It's just like you see physical health. But then mental illness, it's what people now are quoting as mental health. Yet mental illness, it's a group of psychiatric disorders. It's a group of symptoms that we make, that you present with, and we are like, okay, Flavia, you're now diagnosed with depression, depending on the symptoms you're having. So we really need to talk more and try to bring to insight to people to differentiate that, yes, I could be mentally not stable or mentally unstable, but when I'm not mentally sick. And that is why I said when I was starting, we are trying to break the stigma, to try to use the word psychological distress. Because when you say mental health, people think you're fit to be a candidate of admission in a psychiatric hospital. But if we say I am psychologically unwell, we appreciate that sometimes it's a reactive situation. You're reacting to stress, you're reacting to fears, you're reacting to a loan. So it's just that cycle like that. But back to what you
Flavia,
asked.
if you allow me, many times we keep hearing that what you call mental illness is again an excess of the earlier one, mental health. When you're mentally not okay in terms of mental health, then certainly as that goes on and builds up, you end up being mentally ill. How can you dissociate the two in terms of that?
Well, as I stated earlier, mental illness, we follow what we call a diagnostic criteria. For example, you can't just wake up because you've had a quarrel with your wife and then you're feeling low, and I come up and say you have maybe major depression. But we also appreciate that if these psychological stressors you go through, these symptoms that keep going every day, they will end up leading into what we call a mental illness. So that's why even when you come to the hospital, I'll ask you, for how long have these symptoms happened? So there is a specific time frame that will point, yes, one, it meets the criteria of the time frame. Secondly, it should be able to impair your functioning in society. If you are a teacher and you're unable to wake up and go and teach, so that will tell you it is an alarm.
Thank you so much, the doctor, for that. I think it gives us a clear picture of what these two are, and certainly the people here and our viewers will have clear knowledge and information about these two subjects and how to separate them as they deal with them in the society. I want to come to you, Mr. Mayanja. You deal a lot with education. You have a lot of time with students, with learners in the different institutions and at different levels. Talk to me, when you are interacting with these learners and the institutions, how would you state is the how would you define the state of mental health in the environments you be in? And in any case, are we even aware that this is something prevalent in our communities, in our schools, in our churches, and so on? Yes, Mr. Mayanja.
Thank you very much, Phil, for this opportunity. As an educationist, as a teacher on the ground, when you interact with the learners, you discover that there's a huge problem. For example, I'll start with the exam, that incident of last week. I've tried to follow it up, but you discover that that young man, last year, he was in a different school. So the parents decided to change him to a new environment, thinking maybe there will be an improvement. But still, after coming to the new environment, he still would see there was no significant change. He was always isolated. He was always withdrawn. He could never interact with the friends. You would see there was a problem. But because we are living in a money-driven economy, that even the parents, I think, some of these children need enough time to understand them and understand their problem. And also, sometimes, even if the teachers may be able to note some of these challenges, they are not technically trained to handle some of these issues. And then we have a problem of the education system we are in today. The education system is only academic oriented. So sometimes, even if you identify some of these issues, they never give them priority. But when you look at the generation we are dealing with, these children have gone through a lot. I'll give you an experience. 10 years ago, I was teaching a young girl. And this young girl gave me a story that one time, the father took her to a witch doctor late in the night at around 3 a.m. Then the witch doctor told him to move out. And the witch doctor was able to abuse the child. So the child, it kept on traumatizing her. She could not reveal to the dad because the dad was a close friend to the witch doctor. And every time she would come to this, she was distressed, depressed. So it had to take us through stages. I had to interact with one of my friends who was a psychiatrist, who was a counselor. He was able to help this girl. But every time she kept on talking, I'm going to kill myself. I'm fed up of life. I'm fed up of this. So there is a big problem. And the other challenge is that because our system is academically oriented, children are not given adequate time. Counseling is not given priority. It's just by the way, maybe once in a while, in a term, in a month, they can bring to you somebody. He talks for 1 hour, 30 minutes. But some of these problems are individual. You need to deal with the individual, not the group. Because if you assess our background, the factors that cause depression and anxiety among these children are different. Some is the upbringing, some is the economic background, some maybe the environment they've grown up with. Some of them have been subject to torture by the maids or the family relatives. So it's a big, big problem that we must dig up the very root if we are going to help, especially the young people. And then the exposure to ICT, or then we talk about internet. There's a lot that goes through the mind. And at the end of the day, it's not only going to affect the mind of the student, but it's going to affect the entire individual, the way they respond, the way they react, the way they interact, the way they relate. Everything begins from there. So I want to just look at mental health just as a scientific issue. It's a reality that we are living in, that we must look for robust measures of how we are going to address. And even when you look at the system of the government, there are no clear policies of how to help such learners. There are no clear mechanisms.
Thank you, Mr. Mayanja, for that. And you raise very important points in that. I want to come to you, Bridget. Bridget, you are a student. Why would a student think about ending their life at such a time when their parents are expecting so much from them? Yes, Bridget.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Well, it is safe to say that most times when you are like still, especially within the age range that we are speaking about today, there's a lot of conflicting emotions that most of teenagers have. We've all experienced them. And the problem we do have as society is we look at teens as children and we invalidate their feelings a lot. So even when some of these signs show up, we do not really take time to notice them. Now, it is not a one-day thing for someone to wake up and contemplate or ideate suicide. It is usually a ground, it builds up with time. It can be years and years of either trauma, it can be years and years of distress, emotional distress. And some of these, unfortunately, have undiagnosed conditions. Suicide ideation is very easy right these days because one, it is in our faces a lot. In our faces, the media we consume, first of all,
Bridget,
has a lot of these
please
things.
put that clear. When you say it is very easy these days, what do you mean?
It is, when you have a solution being put in your face more, because now, if you look at the media we consume, especially even what is considered to be the young adult, maybe either novels or movies or whatnot, they do put a lot of this content out there without the educational purposes. Like if you watch some of the movies the youngins are consuming, you will see it a lot that there's a lot of media that talks about suicide and does not actually delve into how someone can get out of it or how they can seek help. They just brush it over because it does make the sales. Sad stories make sales. So a lot of this is being put in the faces of the teens. TikTok itself, you're going to see a lot of this information on there. And so it is quite easier for ideation to now come in when you're like going through a lot of emotions. And also when your teenagers are very impulsive people, they're very impulsive people. So what comes at the forefront of their mind is probably what they're going to take on. But I do a lot of school activations. So from what I have interacted with most of the students, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure from the schools, from the parents, from the society itself, the peer groups they are in. There is a lot of pressure and expectations that has been put onto these children. And sometimes we are going to say that there is that trend that older people usually say that we've all been there and we've all gone through. But I would like for people to understand that we all react to what comes into our lives differently. For instance, between me and you, if we were put in the same room and something happened, you would see our reactions are most likely going to differ. And that is something also that we need to take up on. So it is really complicated especially in boarding schools, because a lot goes on in boarding schools that people don't want to talk about. That is also something we talk about. What happens in boarding schools is very, very serious. We have a lot of vices that are coming up. And also something else that I can hint at that could be leading to a lot of the rises of these cases is the drug abuse that has come up. Drug abuse is very high. Now, this is mostly for the high schoolers that are like towards the end and university students. We have a lot of drug abuse that puts us in very precarious situations, because, you know, with long-term use of these drugs comes a lot of emotional distress and a lot of other side effects that can lead to such things. So yes, with university students, there's a lot of still peer pressure is a very big thing. Pressure from home, pressure from school, financial pressure, and then when you couple in the drug abuse. And when we talk about drugs, please let us look at the actual problem. Let's not brush this under a rug, because that is what's happening when we talk about drugs. People assume we are talking about small things that I will not name. But when you actually go into these university spaces, you realize that the drugs being used are not simple small things. We don't know how these things are getting on market, but if we could have at least people that are in the positions that are supposed to be following up on these things. We have people that are actually talking about the drug abuse in universities, but still you can see it's given close to no attention. But I hope with time that we're going to have more people come out to fight this vice.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bridget, for that. And you paint for us a very good picture. I want to come to you, Rose. You are a counselor at ofBuhumuriro. To talk to me, when people come to you, what have you noted as the major causes of these mental health issues, problems that we're talking about today? Yes, Rose.
Thank you so much. Especially among the adolescents and the teenagers, there are a lot of issues that lead to suicide and other mental challenges. Of course, number one, some of these adolescents, they have what we call attention deficit disorder. Yes, they have parents, but sometimes parents at home, we don't pay attention to our children. We normally think that giving a child money, taking the child to school, giving them scholastic materials, that's all what they need. We are busy running up and down looking for money and for more money, but we forget to pay attention to our children. And these children, they grow up with attention deficit disorder, whereby in future, this disorder normally starts at around 3 years and above. If you don't pay attention to a child who's below 7 years, trust me, it will catch up, result into depression, my child lacking. That's what the parents think. But have you given them attention? So when they reach at school, you find these children are isolated. Yes, they have other students around them, but they carry that emptiness within themselves. And also another cause are some of these children back home, they witness misunderstandings between their parents, which sometimes don't go well with them. A child witnessing parents quarreling or not being in good terms together, it tortures them. They feel they are not safe. They feel they are not in a safe environment. Most of the adolescents that I have worked on, they never express those concerns. Yes, the parents have money, have everything, but so long as you're not in good terms and your children are witnessing that, trust me, they may end up developing what we call chronic stress, which can lead into depression. So, and also another cause, some of these children, the way we raise them, it is not the way they raised us. Some of us, our generation here, me and you, we are raised in a generation where our parents would rebuke us and it is okay. Where our parents may maybe refuse to give you something and it is still okay. You just take it easy and let it go. But these days, I may use the word GMOs. These children, they don't have enough emotional resilience like how we used to have those days. So we are raising children in this generation. And also we need to change in parenting styles. We can't raise our children like they raised us. We are totally in a different generation, which parents we have forget to understand that. So I normally give an example. If even the construction of houses have changed, the styles of houses have changed, the iron sheets, you know, we have colored iron sheets. Those days we used to have grass thatched houses. We used to have iron sheets which are white, but now look at there are many different roofings. What about in parenting? Keep in the old mode of parenting, whereby we have caused our children to have a lot of mental health challenges. So you find a parent rebuking a child, telling them all those sorts of bad words, not knowing that this is a totally different generation, whereby their emotions are a bit delicate, whereby they have been exposed to social media. They have watched a lot of things, a lot of stuff. And you wake up and start backing that child, and trust me, they will harbor that anger. I mean, the child may not back at you, may not rebuke you back, but they will keep quiet because this is a child. They will keep quiet. But those suppressed emotions will keep inside them. And it will keep growing. They will start actually having low esteem. I have met adolescents or teenagers who hate their parents, not because parents have not provided needs to them, but how the parents interact with these children, how they handle them. When a child have done something wrong, how do you handle them in this generation? How do you correct them also matters a lot. It can either build them or it can break them. So if we really understand those things, and also I liked the submission of the teacher. These days, schools, they are academic oriented, they are using academic oriented system. They have not paid attention to mental health of these children in schools. So it has caused these mental challenges to grow more and more. Yeah, and people are still using that old model in schools where we have to teach and teach and teach and the children excel without knowing that we are dealing with a different generation. And another cause, the last one, these children are from broken homes, they are from broken marriages. Some of these children are from single parents, single mother, single father. And trust me, a child who grows up with one parent, they grow up with a lot of questions in their hearts. Why is it that my dad is not here? If the dad is not dead, why is it that my dad is not with my mom? If the child is raised by a single father, how is it that my mom is not with my dad? If the mom is not dead. So all those, and some of these children are results of unwanted pregnancies. And they face rejection from birth, which also increases the mental challenges in adolescents today. So if we really understand all that, and we can really see how to help this generation to navigate through those mental challenges, and we can have a better generation tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Madam Rose Kyarimpa. That is really good in terms of giving us what the causes of this particular crisis we're talking about today. And that brings me back to you, Dr. Kyomugisha. Look, earlier you talked about symptoms and you talked about the difference in the diagnostics of either mental health or mental illness. I want you to bring us to speed. In our communities, we live with these people. We have teachers, they have hundreds of youths in their schools. You have community churches. You have many places where people gather, even in our homes. what are some of those signs and symptoms that we should look at and start assuming that maybe this person is not okay, they need medical care, maybe this person, and in any case, do we have these services available at our health institutions? Because we know the status of our health system in the country. Yes, Dr. Flavia.
Thank you, Philip, and the speakers. I really appreciate your submissions. Actually, back to what you asked, the signs and symptoms, I usually, and from what the counselor and other speakers that I've mentioned, you realize that the observations are made in difference in behavior. Like when you look at a student who has been maybe, use an example, doing work normally, when he's in class is attentive, but from nowhere as a teacher, you start to notice. The educationist mentioned that sometimes the teachers are able to identify, or sometimes they actually do not have the skills to identify catch these symptoms early enough. Because we are looking at helping a student, but we cannot know, not until something deviates from the normal. So I always tell people, there is the normal you, there is a normal Philip when you're growing up, there is a normal Flavia when we are growing up, what we call pre-morbid personality. There is that, depending on families and institutions where we have come from, there is that personality that you're shaped. When you get into school, many times parents say, my kid was performing well in primary 1, primary 2, but when it came to primary 4, all of a sudden things changed. When it came to secondary, all of a sudden things changed. And that is what Rose tried to mention, that parenting right now, parents are not there to try to understand their children. If parents are there, that means you're able to do an observation of their behavior. You're able to know, oh, nowadays should concentrate for 1 hour, but now 30 minutes, she's already distracted. That is already an indicator that something could be happening. So a few of the signs, they might not be the same for every student. But if as teachers and parents and people who are observing, if we know students, how they behave, how people have been, if you're a parent, you know Flavia is like this, you know Philip is like this. So it helps you to know when something comes up. You're able to know, okay, today she has refused to eat food. Rather than commenting negatively about her not eating food, because they are adolescents, you'll be like, maybe a color figure. That's now the saying, what most parents say. Go ahead to explore. Why haven't you eaten food today? When you create the safe space for them, you lay a foundation for them to speak up, then you will get to know. There are a few of indicators that point, but I would want to break this, that usually most of the indicators that arise, they are in the extreme stages of the progress of the mental health challenge they are going through. The educationist mentioned about the previous student who has just committed suicide. I am very sorry to hear that the kid was in another school. They noticed that the kid would get withdrawn, the kid would not socialize like he used to do. And then the parents never took the initiative of saying, okay, before we consider changing this kid to a new school, can we invite a counselor? Can we invite, okay, another person to talk with this kid? Can we as parents sit down and try to understand what this student is going through? They did not do that. So to them, they thought it was the school environment, and now they changed the kid to a new school environment. Who knows that probably even the new school environment might have actually precipitated the psychological challenges he was going through. So it is good that we could not be having specific signs and symptoms, because if they become specific, they alarm to what you call a diagnostic now disorder. That is when it is advanced. But we want to hope before we reach the very critical stage of the progress. We start now prevention. When you see, okay, should submit work early, should do this early, should not miss class, should not miss notes. As a teacher, as a parent, as any person who is concerned, go ahead to ask. When you sit with them and try to understand them, you find out more. But a few things can arise. They skip meals, they're not able to have good sleep, they isolate themselves, They lose interest in things they used to do or to enjoy doing. They would miss appointments. Many of them, you see them talking to themselves. And for you, you think that the education is also mentioned about social media, because it's also another problem for us. You do not give attention to these adolescents. So what happens? They go to social media, they try to find out solutions, but unfortunately the solutions they get might not be the best solutions for their problems. And what happens? It precipitates their well-being, their unwell-being actually. So literally, I would say, let's appreciate the normal, but also start from what is normal, and you try to look at the abnormal behaviors that are rising. Just like Bridget said, when you see students who are using drugs, you never know. But when you realize that a student is barking at a teacher with very much confidence, try to suspect that something could be wrong. You try to be like, I think I need to find time and explore more and try to understand what exactly is happening. So that's a quick way on how to know these students could be going through some kind of mental challenges, by realizing that there is a difference from the normal, and now some kind of abnormal behaviors are rising.
Thank you so much, Flavia, for that. And that brings me, Mr. Hannington, look, Rosia talked about our parenthood, and she says in her own words, we are stuck in the old mode of parenting, stuck in the old mode of teaching, and we don't realize that we have a new brand of youth, of students, of learners that are engaged in completely different things. How do we then make a transition from these old models to a new model that is suitable for the youth we have today, so that we avoid some of these cases that we're experiencing in society? Yes, Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you very much, Phil. Maybe before I address your question, I was interested in looking at the mental health report that was released last year for Uganda. And the statistics are very interesting. When you look at that report, they said 12% of people aged 10 and above in this country have psychological distress. Then it goes ahead to say that 24.2% of adults have a mental disorder. 30.2% of adults have depression. 22.2% of adults have anxiety. Then it went ahead to say that 21% of secondary school adolescents have depression. That's a big percentage, 21% of adolescents. And then 26.6%.
Maybe if you just allow me just chip in briefly there. One of the news outlets in the country, in the name of the Daily Monitor, had a very big headline about that particular report, saying that one in every 3 Ugandans is mentally unstable. I think we should start there.
That is it. So 26.6% of secondary school adolescents have anxiety. So we have two categories of students. There are those who are suffering from depression, and there are those who are suffering from anxiety. Now, going back to our upbringing, currently we decide that many of the parents concentrate on 3 things. They are interested in the spiritual needs of the child, the physiological needs of the child, and the academic needs. And then they forget that some of the factors that are fundamental in influencing this child are the psychological needs and the emotional needs. And most times they are never given attention. So the question is, how do we go away from here? Number one, as a society, or as especially the school setup, there is need to expand the social emotional learning programs. There must be programs that are geared at helping these children to grow emotionally. How do you adjust when you have emotional challenges, when you have issues that you're finding difficulty in coping with? 2, there must be either it is a panel, a task force, or experts in these institutions, when you recognize signs of trauma and behavior changes, action must be taken. Let us not simply talk about and say, that child has a problem. That child of mine, these days, I don't understand him. We should what? Take action. Because the more you delay, the more the damage is being done. Number 3, we need to improve home support from the parents. Yes, I know we have to look for the money, but as parents, we should create some little time, that one-on-one interaction. Now, you're not talking about performance at school. You're not talking about you have a girlfriend or not. We are now talking things of the heart. Open up this child. You know, many of these children cannot open up because they fear the parents. Parents are rough. I've paid a lot of money. You're performing poorly. I want to be a doctor. I want to be an engineer. That's the only thing they think about. But have you gone to the depth to look at this child? So there is need to provide mental health support for many of our learners in this kind of precarious state. And even the teachers need to be trained. Some basic training, it may not be so deep, but some basic training. How do you identify such students with problems? And when you identify them, how do you handle? Like you remember, when we got COVID-19 here, the government came out very fast that when you see somebody with these signs, call this number. But this is a problem that has come to stay with us of mental depression, but we don't have a way. How do we handle it the moment we notice it? Then lastly, we also need to protect and prioritize these higher risk students. Because we should understand the fact that whereas there are many students who face mental health challenges, not all cases are created equally. There are those in high risk situations that somebody is contemplating suicide, is contemplating doing harm themselves. Like yesterday, I was witness as a young man lighting on himself fire next to the parameter. No, I was there. And what makes somebody reach that extent? It means somebody has not given them audience to listen to them, to help them understand themselves and try to seek a solution to get them out of that miry clay. So as a country, as the institutions, we have a bigger task of how we are going to help, especially the new generation, because the demands of today can make you, even as a parent, to be depressed all the time. Loans, what? So even you may not be in the right frame of mind to help the child, because actually you're worse off than the child. But that for you, because you're mature, you may not got the expert think of what? Society. The bills are high. So there must be a platform of how to help these children.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayanja, for that. And I think it gives us good help in terms of trying to address this particular crisis from our community. And I want to come back to you, Bridget. Bridget, look, one of the things Rosie mentioned was that the youth of these days are not as much emotionally resilient as we used to be times that have gone by. And I keep asking, why is it such so that young people today, one, are so weak emotionally? They're usually I hear they're so entitled. If this is not available, then I cannot continue with this. If this is not provided, then certainly I'm not loved. Therefore, I should cease to exist. I should stop going to school and so on. What creates that among the people? When you look at your circles, what is the problem?
There is no answer that is like a one size fits all. But what I would like to say is, when it comes to the statement that we especially when they say that Gen Zs are not emotionally resilient, I believe it is a little myopic the way it is stated. When you look at this generation, it's not that they are not emotionally resistant, they are more emotionally aware. So let's look at the generational gaps. the generation before, you have people that you know, it's jammed in their mind that do not whine about this, do not do this, do not this, get through life. Whatever happens, get through life. But then you have a generation that is a bit more into talking about what they are feeling. Now, when people say that you can't get your children to open up, it's mostly because it's being done wrongly. Now, I need for parents and teachers as well to understand that to a certain extent, you're not fully equipped for this, especially if you see that your child is exhibiting signs out of the norm. If you try to talk to them and they seem to not be opening up, instead of you shutting down the conversation, get someone that can do that for you. I often encourage for people to get into therapy, parents as well, because we have a lot of emotions being carried from a parent to a child, from a child to a parent. Sometimes it's best for all of you to get an objective person to help the both of you. So yes, we are just having a generation that is more emotionally aware than maybe the previous one, which is probably why they say it's a weaker generation. But like I said, it's not a one size fits all. Yes, there are some entitled children. And again, this goes back to the way you're parenting someone, the way people are being raised of late. If you keep telling someone, I'm going to do this for you, I'm going to do this for you, and you do not do it, of course. And then we have the tendency to not teach children, especially, like you can even see it with the young ones, that you will not get it all. It is not going to come all, and it's very okay. And then this goes back to communication. Are you communicating with your children? Are you telling them that I am going to get this for you, but there's a possibility it will not come. And if it doesn't come, it is still not fine. I have a system that my parents used to use of essentials and luxuries. What is essential to your living and what is luxurious? You know, you need to have the essentials, and the luxuries come with time. If it does not come, it is still fine. The point is, are the essentials available? Yes, that is one. And two, I would also say that we are in such a society that is high, that consumerism is too much. We want to have a lot of everything. So in these formative stages, if you have everything at your disposal, and then you reach a point where it is not available, of course, you're going to have certain children not take it well. I am not saying do not give your child stuff. I'm saying regulate the way it is done, so that you're not having a child that's growing up with a certain sense of entitlement. And it's also okay to, at a certain point, say no, especially if you as a parent, you're going through something financially. It's okay to say no, because most times what happens is you're having a child asking for something, and then you have a parent trying to get something, they fail to get it, you have both the parent stressed and the child also going through an emotional distress. Then the parent offloads those emotions onto the child. The child is, that dynamic is, it's very, when you look at a lot of how it's being done now, that is what you see. So it is okay to not have something, and let your children know that it is okay that something is not available at the moment. But yes, we're just a more emotionally aware society now, generation, I could say. So yes, there is that as well. But
Thank
it
you.
is, like I said, we need to embrace the concept of therapy. Parents, especially parents that have gone through something traumatic while growing up, that have experienced too many emotions, grief, whatnot, please, it is very essential for you to also seek help to go through this, because most times the way your child responds to you is a result of how you're connecting with them. So you have angry parents, you have parents that are bottling things up, and that also like creates a very painful dynamic for the children as well. So yes, and if you're a parent, you've noticed that your child is not okay, and you have seen that, you know what, the truth is my child is closed up, she's not eating, he or she's not eating, he's always in his room, he's isolating himself, you've tried to reach out, it hasn't worked, it is very okay to say yes, at this point, I need to get someone else to help me so that we avoid things like these. Because sometimes it's just a simple conversation with someone that they feel is not going to judge them, that someone is not going to corner them. And we are all emotional. As a parent, you have every right to feel what you're feeling. It is okay. But then sometimes how we react to these emotions is what causes the problem and the rift. And yes, it is. I'm not a parent, I can't say, but parenting looks difficult. But also from the perspective of the child and the student, sometimes all you need is a listening ear. Then, for what I would think is happening in schools is,
as you conclude.
yes, what is happening in schools, we have the Ministry of, I think, yes, Education rolled out a program on how mental health should be addressed in schools. But when you're doing the school activations, you realize it is not being done. So, especially the issue of counselors. I like to tell people that counselors are supposed to be impartial. If you're having a teacher as a counselor, you're not helping at all. Have someone come in from the outside that is specifically sitting in their office to attend to the children. You're not a teacher. You're not part of the non-teaching staff. Your job is you're the non-teaching staff, of course, but you're just a counselor in the school. That way, it is easier for a student to open up to the counselor that this and this is going on in class. Because if it's a teacher, there's a certain school I visited where they complain that they have a teacher as their counselor, and when they go to him, he will take back everything to their teachers. So you see, then you're not having a really inclusive society whereby you're saying, we are going to have a safe space for these children to talk about what they're going through. Yes.
Thank you so much, Bridget, for that. And it's so important because even as a mental health advocate, you were a student, and so this information is being got firsthand, and it's very important that we pick it from you. I want our time is really moving so fast, but let's see how we move with the conversation and we conclude in the shortest time possible. Rose, we are speaking about having these professional assistants in our communities. First, I want to find out, do you have schools reaching out to you to seek your services in their environment? And when you go there, how is the reception like from one, the teachers and the students? But two, we used to have long time ago what we call the role of the community. When you go out there, the elders in our societies, the church, when you talk about the reverends and so on, they used to assist in the upbringing and counseling of young people and giving guidance. Do we still have this in our communities, and is it working? Yes, Rose.
Thank you so much. Yes, there are many schools that normally reach to us as a Ofbumuriro Counseling Center, and they normally invite us to the schools to give mental health awareness talks, and it is really working out well. But we observe that many schools don't have professional counselors. So most schools are still using senior women, senior man who are part of the teaching staff. So which is not really not working well. So they would like to get an independent professional counselor handle that. And also another observation is that teachers need basic skills in counseling, especially how to identify children who are at risk of committing suicide. Also to identify children with mental health disorders. If a Minister of Health can look into it, equip all teachers in schools with some skills, how to do screening, mental screening, how to give like first aid if it is a crisis and a child is maybe contemplating about suicide and all that. I think it can help to calm down those cases that are arising in schools. And also about community engagement and raising a child. These things are no longer existing. If you are an elder in the community, you see someone's child in a wrong, if you talk to them, they will take you to police. And these days, children, they grow up in schools. Those days, children need to they used to be in communities, but these days, most of the time, children are at school. And when they're in the community, you can't talk to someone's child. They will maybe look at you as someone who's out to date, some kind of things. So I think those things, they are no longer now working as it used to be before. As I conclude, I would urge out, especially people who are into education, to think about trainings in schools of teachers, and also routine mental awareness talks in schools to students, and also routine mental screening. We use simple tools to carry out screening. You can use it maybe class by class, you do screening, and you assess students who are at risk, and the other person talks to children who are at risk. We have that group that are at risk of developing mental challenges, especially orphans. Children who are orphans, they have high risk of developing mental challenges. Children who are from broken homes, who are from broken marriages. Daily routine screening can help us to identify those students early and to help them to avoid rampant suicide cases. Otherwise, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rose, for that. And we have about 3 minutes to be out of here. I want to divide them into Mr. Mayanja here and Flavia to give us some final tips about this particular. I'll start with you, Flavia, as we get out of here in about a minute.
Well, thank you. I think one of the way forward is more of awareness campaigns, just like what we are doing here. And maybe also we need to speak to the right people that are able to implement the policies. Yes, we do not have policies that really integrate mental health services in schools. Many schools don't have it. So if we could be pioneers, if we could be focal people that could spread and see that they are integrated, but also I would also want to ask the educationists, regardless, as we wait for the government to integrate these services in the education system, what can you do in your capacity, in your budget? Can you please have maybe a counselor? If he cannot be a resident counselor, at least a visiting counselor, maybe every month, or depending on what your budget can accommodate, to see that we have more of the speaking, more of the talking to these students, try to understand, then also conduct trainings of teachers to see how we equip them with basic skills that could help us in identifying. They might not be able to do much, but when they identify, they listen, they are able to lead to care. And maybe also the advocates, let's continue because we are doing a good work. But it's just that, let's see how we reach many more people there. I believe with this space, we are able to reach quite a number of people, and I pray we keep talking about it, not until we also pray for our government to streamline the policies that will integrate mental health care in schools. And the integration of mental health care should start right away from primary level, from nursery, daycare, nursery, primary, secondary, university, tertiary, so that it becomes a continued system. But even when a student leaves primary, he goes to secondary, the service is still there. And also this to the parents. They have shared parenting is a problem because we are too busy looking for money, and we forget about the children we gave birth to. Can we please add our children on the list of our busy schedule? Let's not leave social media to parent our children. Let's not leave maids. Let's not leave peers to parent the children. Let's be there. Let's listen where we cannot offer help, inviting someone else to offer the help. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Flavia, for that. And Mayanja, in a minute.
Thank you very much. Finally, I would say, as parents, we need to play an oversight role. You may not spend the whole day at home. Try to find out what happens to this child. What does he do? What kind of treatment they get? It will give you a clue of what to do. Number two, we should try as teachers, we should try to understand the children. When you identify somebody who is manifesting strange signs and symptoms, please, even if you may not be an expert, you can report the relevant authorities, the head teacher, and the right measures are taken so that we save this child. Number three, the government needs to come up with a policy on mental health, specifically for schools. Because you decide that once a child starts going to school, they spend almost 80% of their time at school. They are rare at home. Even those who are day scholars, they come back home late in the evening. So they spend most of their time at school. So these are policies that should target the schools and how to address this. And finally, we must also engage these adolescents in a constructive conversation, not just a one-time thing. It should be a routine practice, and even create space whereby they can even open up to share some of those issues they are going through. And that's the only way they can be able to be saved and helped to overcome some of these emotional challenges they are undergoing. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayanja Hannington, thank you so much for your views and for the time you've given us for the conversation today. We appreciate
I'm
you so
grateful.
much. Mr. Mayanja is an educationist, an educational planner, and administrator. We thank you so much. Dr. Kyomugisha Flavia, thank you so much for your time and for the views you've shared with us today. And we really appreciate that you were able to join us today. Flavia is a mental health professional, a technologist, a psychiatrist, and many other things. Thank you so much for your time and for the knowledge you've had to share with us today. Rose Kyarimpa, founder of ofBuhumuriro Counseling Center, thank you so much for your thoughts today and indeed for making time to the conversation. And indeed, Bridget Bagonza, a mental health advocate and a law student at Uganda Christian University. We thank you so much for your time and for your thoughts to this conversation. And certainly,
there is something I'd like to say. We have a free hotline for counseling services for anyone that can call, various languages across the country. The number is 0800 21 2121. It's available Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 5 p.m. We have counselors on call at all and in those working hours, and any language will be worked upon. Thank you very much.
yes, that's again, pardon on the organization.
Mental Health Uganda.
Mental Health Uganda. So very important it is. If you want any form of counseling services, you could call out that number and I'll read it out again. It is 0800 21 21 21. You can call in and feel free to speak in any language of your choice and you will be attended to during working hours. Thank you so much, Bridget, for that, and thank you for making time for the conversation and indeed joining us today. Special thanks to the technical team and special thanks to the Center for Constitutional Governance and all our partners out there that have made this possible today. From us, we say good evening and we shall see you next time.